British people often talk in this way. Of course, not all British people, but a lot of us. I'm talking about how indirectly British people speak. In some countries, language is very direct. If you want to say something, you say it. If you think something, you say it. In the UK, we are very, very polite, almost too polite. So a lot of what we say is quite indirect. Do you need to talk like this? No. But if you're planning on visiting or even moving to the UK, you might find this interesting to know. Let me give you some real overly polite ways British people talk to each other. Let's start with when you want something. If you want to make a request, these are some of the overly polite ways a lot of British people like to do it. Could I? This is a very common and a very polite way of asking for something. If you want to make sure you sound polite, always go for could. There are other ways of asking for things that are also polite, but could is so safe. If you're in a restaurant, could I have some water, please? Could we have some bread for the table, please? Could we sit by the window, please? It's safe, it's polite, could. Would you mind? And be careful, we always use the ing form of the verb with this. So would you mind verb ing. This is a very polite way of making a request. Would you mind opening the window? Would you mind helping me fix this lamp? Is it okay if? Or would it be all right if? These are very polite and friendly ways to ask permission. Is it okay if I sit here? Would it be all right if I used your phone for a second? And we usually use this when we ask to do something, not to get something. Sit here, use your phone. Don't worry, it is still polite to say, can I sit here, please? That is still polite, but a lot of British people just like to be extra polite. So we say, is it okay if I sit here, please? Or would you mind if I take that, please? I was wondering if I could. This is super polite. I often find myself starting requests with, I was wondering. Again, it's so indirect. Lots of other cultures would just ask for what they want. They would say, oh, can I have this? We like to say, I was wondering if I could borrow this. Oh, I was wondering if I could talk to you about something. I was wondering if I could have some help. You know, so much stuff happens before we actually make the request. It's ridiculous. Even refunds in a restaurant. If something is wrong with my food, I should get a refund. But instead of saying, can I get a refund? I might say, oh, I was wondering if I could get a refund. Sorry. Like, I'm apologizing because my food was bad and I should get a refund. I'm apologizing for that. Next up we have, do you think you could? Again, a lot of words for just making a request, but we love doing it here. We love sounding so polite. Do you think you could help me? Do you think you could work later tomorrow evening? Do you think you could paint the walls pink? It softens the request. We're asking, do you think you could? Do you think you are able to do this? Not will you do this? Do you think you are able to do it? It's a super gentle, soft way of making a request. You will also hear a lot of British people using softeners in their language. Small words that make the request even gentler and even more polite, if that's even possible. Some examples of softeners are just, a bit, possibly, and sorry. Sorry is a big one. British people love to put sorry at the beginning of a sentence, even when there's nothing to apologise for. For example, sorry, could I sit there, please? Why am I apologising? I'm apologising before I've even said anything and I haven't done anything wrong. I'm asking a very simple request, but because I'm British, something in me wants to apologise before I've even made a request. But you'll also hear softeners like just. When we put just in a request, it makes the request seem smaller, like it's not as big of a deal. So could I just borrow that for a second, please? Could I just borrow that for a second? And making it seem like it's such a small request, it's not a big deal. Another softener, perhaps. Could you perhaps help me with this? Perhaps, maybe. I don't want to assume that you're going to help me. I don't want to directly say, can you help me? I want to assume nothing. So I say, could you perhaps help me? Maybe. The magic word, always say please. Oh my goodness, always say please. People in the UK will villainize you if you don't say please. Always please, always thank you. You're safe. Okay, so let's compare some direct and some polite requests. Give me some water. Could I have some water, please? I want a refund. Excuse me, I was wondering if I could get a refund. Open the window. Would you mind opening the window, please? Help me. I was wondering if you'd be able to help me. Move. Sorry, would it be all right if I got by? Okay, let's have a practice. So I'm going to give you a very direct sentence, and then we're going to think of the more indirect, overly polite version that you might hear in the UK. So first one, I want to sit here. That's what you want, but you can't just say that. So how can we make this a little bit more polite? What do you think? Is it all right if I sit here? Or even better, excuse me, is it all right if I sit here? Okay, so that's what we want. Give me the menu. That is what we want, but we can't say that. So have a think, how can we make that more polite, more indirect? Woo, okay, so we could say something like this. Could I see the menu, please? There's that could. In restaurants, it's so safe. You will always sound polite if you start your request with could and end it with please. Safe, safe, safe. Okay, that's what I want. I want you to turn down the music, but I have to be a bit more polite. So what could we say? How about this? Oh, don't judge my handwriting. Right, look at how many softeners we've got here. Would you mind? Very polite way of starting a sentence, but make sure the verb always goes in ing. I've also put just in there, just to add more softeners. Would you mind just turning the music down a bit, please? A bit. You know, it's not this huge request. It's just a small request. So this is how many polite things we've got in here. Would you mind? That's nice and polite. Just as nice and polite. A bit, please. Look at how much we've added to that sentence just so that we can be super polite. It's exhausting. Help me with this. Help me. Got to be a bit more polite. You have a think. How could you say this in a nice polite way? Here's one option. There are other ways of asking this politely, but here's one option. Do you think you could help me with this, please? Do you think you could? Again, notice could, super polite, could. I like it a lot, helps everything sound very polite. Do you think you could help me with this, please? For any of these examples, if you can think of some other ways of making them polite, let me know in the comments down below. Let's move on to another area where we need to be very polite. Disagreeing or saying no. Here's how some of us British folk like to disagree. In many cultures, saying no directly is perfectly normal. But for a lot of people in the UK, just saying no can sound a little bit rude. Again, we like to soften disagreements. Again, using indirect language. So first of all, let's just talk about some common features of polite British disagreement. Softeners, things that soften the disagreement so it doesn't seem too harsh. And a very common softener is I'm afraid. So if you're saying no to someone, a lot of British people say I'm afraid. So for example, I can't help you, I'm afraid. Or I can't do that, I'm afraid. So putting I'm afraid either at the beginning or the end of you saying no just helps it seem like you really care. You're not just saying no. You're saying, I'm sorry about that. I really do care. I'm afraid to tell you this because I care about helping you. I'm not just saying no. Again, like always, we are very indirect when we tell somebody that they're wrong. We never say you're wrong. If somebody does say you're wrong, that's usually a very impactful thing to say, and it's probably a very serious moment and they're probably having an argument and they want to be rude to that person. We like to start with the positives first. So instead of just saying, you did this wrong, I didn't like this, no, 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 we start with something that we liked or something that was good. We also do a lot of putting ourselves down. So even if we think we're right, we will say, I'm not sure, or I might be wrong, or I'm sorry, but we're always putting ourselves down. We don't want to come across like we know everything. We want to put ourselves down. So here are some useful phrases for disagreeing or saying no politely. I'm not sure that's quite right. This is a very gentle way of saying you're wrong. You are wrong. Wrong. But we say it in a very soft way. oh, I'm not sure that's quite right. I'm not sure. Again, we don't want to appear like we know everything. So we say, oh, I'm not sure. Like, we can't even be confident when telling someone they are wrong. We have to say, oh, I'm not sure. I'm not sure that's quite right. I thought the meeting was at 3 p.m, not 2. Another great phrase, I see what you mean, but. So we're starting by agreeing partially to their point. We're agreeing somewhat. Yeah, I see what you mean. I understand what you're saying, but I think you're completely wrong, and I'm going to tell you why I think you're completely wrong. Yeah, I see what you mean, but I think there's another way to look at it. Similar to this, we have, that's an interesting point. That's an interesting point. So again, we are validating what the person has said. We are not saying, whoa, you're so wrong. We are agreeing that what they said is interesting, but I still think that you're wrong, and I'm going to now tell you what I think. That's an interesting point, though I'm still not sure I completely agree. This next one just sums up British politeness. I might be wrong, but. So we're starting our sentence with, I might be wrong. Again, we don't want to cause any trouble. We don't want to seem like we are saying we are better than everybody. I might be wrong, but in our heads, we know we are definitely not wrong. In our heads, we are thinking, I'm not wrong, I'm right. But we say, I might be wrong, just so we don't seem too arrogant. I might be wrong, but didn't we already discuss this in yesterday's meeting? I'm definitely not wrong, but I don't want people to think I'm arrogant or rude. Let's compare some direct ways of saying no or disagreeing, and then some polite ways of doing it. No, I don't think so, I'm afraid. That's wrong. I'm not sure if that's quite right. I disagree. I see where you're coming from, but you made a mistake. There might be a small mistake here. That idea won't work. It might be a bit tricky to make that work. Okay, let's have a practice. I will give you a direct sentence. See if you can make it a little bit more British, okay? What about this one? I don't agree with you. How can we soften that? Make it a little bit less harsh. I don't agree with you. So we could say something like, I see your point, but I'm not sure I agree with you. So we are validating what they've said. Yeah, I see your point. I understand what you're saying. I've listened, but I'm not sure I agree with you. What about this one? This isn't good. Imagine someone has produced some work for you and it's not good. Do we just tell them this isn't good? Maybe we do. Maybe in some companies, the boss will just tell you this isn't good. But if you want to do it in a softer way, what could we say? You could say something like, it's not quite what I expected. It's not quite what I expected. That's such a roundabout way of saying that's wrong. And finally, what about this one? You misunderstood. You got that wrong. You misunderstood. How can we soften that? We could say, I think there might have been a bit of a misunderstanding. So instead of saying you misunderstood, putting it on you, we're going to say there might have been a bit of a misunderstanding. We're not blaming anyone. We're not saying you misunderstood, you misunderstood. We're saying there might have been a misunderstanding somewhere, somehow. I don't know who. A bit of a, again, makes it smaller, softens it. I think there might have, again, everything is so unsure. We really don't like just being direct and saying that is right, that is wrong. I think there might have been a bit of a misunderstanding. Again, this is not all British people, let me just say that, but it's very common. So yes, there are people that speak very directly and they do it in a polite way. If you speak directly, it does not mean necessarily that you are impolite. I'm just teaching you the common ways that a lot of people speak. And there you are. If you would like to learn more about this, let me know in the comments. Be sure to follow us on Instagram at smashing.english. Head over to smashingenglish.com to see all of our amazing English courses. Thank you so much for watching and we will see you next time. Ta-ta!